15-year period, you need to create 100 million new jobs. And that's what the Arab world is looking at. There are literally 100 million jobs that are needed in the next 15 years if you want to just maintain the current unemployment level. So that's something that hasn't really happened in the past. And I can't imagine a system where large corporations manage to provide those jobs. I think that the future is in entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. And if we can find political leadership that recognizes that, and instead of trying to provide jobs from the government or control the private sector, actually provides an ecosystem that allows people to start companies, allows them to fail without destroying their lives, and so on. I think you'll see a lot more of these small enterprises start up, and then some of those will become large corporations, but they will be responsible for themselves, and it'll be less about the few massive corporations that run the world and more about a large sort of bottom of the pyramid that employs the probably tens of millions who will get jobs. But that again, that's one of those things that because it's never really been seen before, I don't think anyone knows how it will develop. But in the immediate future, I suspect that we will end up with more of a sort of a socialist bent. Just because that's, there's a very populist movement right now. That's what people want to hear, that the next government will provide the jobs, will provide higher minimum wage, and will lower taxes at the same time, and will provide all these services. So there will be a lot of sort of socialist promises. Whether or not they come to fruition, I doubt they will, but there will be an experiment, I think, in socialism. But long term, I think the answer lies in entrepreneurship.
And you think about what's going on right now with the austerity measures that different members of Congress are trying to push in the United States, the austerity measures in England, except when there's a royal wedding, and then it doesn't seem to matter. There are people around the world, people are trying since 2008 to come up with different models, and unfortunately Egypt is in a really bad situation in that. The United States can't figure out most of these answers.
My name is Raymond Sweha, and I want first to thank the panelists and the organizers. My question is a follow-up question kind of thing. It's about corruption and economic growth. If you're Egyptian or you've done any business in Egypt, you cannot get anything done without paying a bribe.
Or 2 or 3 or 4.
Exactly, a lot of them. And there's a lot of high-profile corruption trials now for big business people, ministers, and it seems that there's, as you said, there's a trend toward socialism, anti-capitalism, and I'm kind of afraid of the economical impact in Egypt, that there could be an exodus of capital from Egypt. All those people running business in Egypt might be afraid of the bad thing they did before with the previous governments and all the bribe and all the bad things, the shady things. So I'm kind of worried. I understand that your point that the hiring and the jobs are coming from small businesses, but what if big businesses that are already there leave? And Egypt has been seeing like 6%, 7% growth rate, and like if you don't really have economic progress in the next few years, that might really hurt the revolution and the political reform.
Yeah, I mean, this is a real problem. And since January, much of the Egyptian economy shut down because of the demonstrations, because of the strikes, and then the curfews that remained for weeks after Mubarak left. That is a really real fear, because when you talk about 6 and 7% growth, that was for a certain segment of the economy, where most of the economy was left out of that improvement. But it's certainly a fear, because you can certainly head off to Dubai, you can head off to a different country. That's going to be part of the transition period. And to have a culture, economic culture that tries to encourage these companies to stay, but not be as corrupt as they were. That's a really hard process.
And also one of the big challenges right now is not that there is no capital. There's a lot of capital in Egypt and the Arab world. The problem is access to capital and